I knew of you more as an actress than I did as a comic before.
That's interesting because a lot of people, because I've been an actor for like 22 years, and because I sort of was an out of work actor alongside it, but stand up took off in the way I always hoped and dreamed my acting career would take off. That more people end up knowing me. They were like, "Oh, would you ever consider acting?" And I'm like, "I've been an actor for a decade, before 8 out of 10 cats." And so that's good to know, because sometimes people, with the panel show, I kind of started in panel shows. Like when I think of, say, your career and your videos, which are so amazing and good, even someone just said to me, I was like, I'm doing your podcast today, and someone was like, oh, that Wimbledon commentator thing, because I think I reposted it. Like all of your stuff, so astute, but also warm. Like all of your commentary is like gently political and anthropological, but warm. Like it's all from a very loving spot, if you know what I mean.
That, man.
It reminds me of the way Ramesh talks about parenting, where he'll be like, bloody kids, but you know he loves them. It's it's that same space.
Oh, thank you.
But I was like, that's a way so many comics are coming up now, being found that way.
100%, man.
Whereas I came up through like where panel shows, first of all, panel shows could pay your rent. Like if you got onto one of those, that could help pay your rent. It was like
100%,
that type of thing. But also the spots were also less and everything like that. But I came up at a time when they were watched, like at the very start of my career, they were watched. So you suddenly felt like, sometimes now I do like 3 or 4 TV things in a row, and I'm like, oh, things are going to change tomorrow, and you're like one new follower on Twitter or something. Whereas at the time, if you did like a panel show,
man.
You were recognized. I remember the first time I did 8 out of 10 cats, I had to go and have like quite a private backyard inspection, if you get my drift, from the hospital. Round the back, do you know what I mean? Not round the front. And the doctor asked if he could bring a student in, and I'm kind of like, look, the NHS needs to look at their students somehow. But I'd just been on like a 8 out of 10 cats when it was like Sean Locke, a big prime time thing. And he brought 3 students in, and you know when you know someone has recognised you.
Oh
it's the eyes. It's just a sort of like the slight like.
It's the eyes where it's like, you know when you're driving a car, and you've got your lights on, but you do that thing when you pull it back. And they open more.
Exactly, and it's
like that.
And it can happen. It happens to people when they recognise anyone. It's not about someone being from telly. If you recognise someone's ex or like a
100%.
It's a natural human. I recognise that from the middle student. And then I tried to do I can do one, but I tried to twist into a bit of an English accent, because I was obviously rolled over on my side, getting inspected by 3 students, with one of them basically going, "Oh, it's your one from 8 and 10 cats," and I just knew, like every bit of my body knew, and so then I was trying to be a bit like, yeah, no, that doesn't hurt too much. That's all right. Like, just trying to kind of go, maybe you're wrong. Maybe I'm just another Irish girl and, like, you've got a problem seeing faces or whatever. But that meant that so many people sort of thought I was just that, because at the time it was huge exposure, as opposed to now there's so many TV show things. Even like podcasts are filmed now. And they're like mini television shows as well on people's Instagrams. Whereas then it was like TV. And there wasn't much more access to other people if you couldn't get in to that route. You didn't have a way of getting audiences sometimes. And so now it's so much better that like people can kind of show their talent without having to go through a committee, in a sense. Which is so much better. I mean, look what it's done for you. But like, so that was but I remember kind of thinking, oh God, has this totally overtaken all the years of grafting with drama school and acting and stuff like that? Because I see it as a whole separate art form and career.
Of course.
So that was sort of the start of sort of big things. But
you was in Edinburgh
things
as well, like you're like
I
feel like your Edinburgh is like, you had a good Edinburgh.
It's weird because do you ever feel like this from the outside? What people see as good, you don't remember. You know, you don't remember. You remember the graft, or like your successes feel like. Like I remember I did, I won a competition called So You Think You're Funny, which is like a big stand-up competition, but for 5 minutes of stand-up. So everyone's doing 5 minutes, and so the whole way through you're doing 5 minutes. But that's my old poster for like a whole hour. Whereas the year before that, when I was in Edinburgh, I won a competition, and I think the hook, you know, when like there's a hook for newspapers to hook into.
Yeah.
At the time, I was the first woman to win it in 20 years. So that was just a hook for like clicks.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I was like, oh, this is cool. And it was a great, but suddenly that was enough of a hook to be booked on lots of things, which I hadn't expected, because I was like, it's 5 minutes. I didn't do an hour.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people know outside the industry what Edinburgh mean. They mean, you won Edinburgh.
Yeah.
You know, my aunt kept on saying, you won Edinburgh. I heard you won Edinburgh. And you're like, it was 5 minutes. It was just like, don't book me too much, because it was 5 minutes. Just, you know, I'm still new. And for me, like, the first time I felt like an element of success was more my creative success, is that I did this festival in Wales and I managed to do an hour. Like, I didn't know if I could talk or hold court for an hour.
Yeah.
And even though that Edinburgh would have done well, like, and sold, for me that hour felt like a turning point, because I knew it felt differently. Whereas that was work and was thing, but your versions of success that you will mark and know that was the key little change that helped you, like a sort of important conversation you have at the right time.
Yeah.
Was for me definitely the thing. I remember being there going, God, everyone's still with me, and I've got quite bad ADHD, didn't know it at the time. Everyone else did. But I remember thinking, oh, this is, I can do, everyone's still with me in here, so this is something I can kind of hold, sort of thing. Or and so the moments sometimes when people offer you like success, you're like, it was actually 5 months before that in our tale, where our hero meets its journey, type of thing. I
think, you know what's interesting about Edinburgh is that it's like, I've always had mixed reviews of what Edinburgh is.
Yeah.
I think for me going there, it was just really to see if it was this thing where I was always told that this is where you get your audience. And you find it here. And I'm always glad that I'd done it, because it was that thing that I'd able to tick off and realise that, so my audience isn't really here.
Yeah, but also in terms of like, I remember when I was even doing 8 out of 10 Cats, there seemed to be such a dichotomy between, like, say, the black comedy circuit, and people actually got and feeling like it was separate, and even bookers like trying to get people down there. And like, Edinburgh was important. Like, I think everyone who does Edinburgh, brilliant, and that's fantastic. But in terms of people telling you that that's the route, and especially like, say, how you found things, what I love about, say, the internet now and people finding their voices through in different ways, is that it's art and it's creativity, and who decides where the audience is. It's kind of a little bit of a one type of church. And I'm like, and I like the intelligence of going there and going, oh my God, this is amazing if you're this. But for me, absolutely, I can do 3 nights in London and then someone else around this, and still have the same art form,
of course,
and tour with that and find my people a different route. And I think I've definitely fallen into that camp in my brain as well, in that I'm going, what do I want, and is it my following a path that isn't going to technically nurture me all the way? Or am I doing it because everyone says I should, and then I can go somewhere? It was almost like, I remember having a chat for a while at the start of when I was starting even stand-up. There was an element of like, oh, of course women are going to like you, but if men like your stuff, then you're good. Like, if the lads like you, if you get the male gaze, and by gaze I mean GAZE, because I have the others, then that means you're actually good. So if you can make it in like spaces where everyone's fighting to be heard, and you manage to be the girl who like gets her voice across, wow, that's how you know. Rather than like, why am I not in a safe space where everyone likes me? I can be silly and funny. Of course. I'm just trying to get my ideas across. I'm not trying to get bravado. And that turn, which has then been helped by those communities and spaces being made more like you do with so many of your stuff and your gigs and your Channel 4 takeovers and stuff like that. You're like, oh, let's make a space where we're already liked, so we don't have to fight so hard and I can just tell my jokes. Rather than, you know, there's something to be said about, you know, finding your journey, but like, it's not looking for the easy way. It's looking for a way that's just not fighting for no apparent reason or something like that.
It's true, man. So, you know what's interesting you say about finding the acceptance from an audience that you didn't know would find you funny?
Yes,
because for me that was always the mainstream audience to me, because I always felt like my audience that were coming, they had seen me from, you know, whether it's my social media stuff, but ultimately it was like, you know, can I do something on television which is comedy that like mainstream comedy, someone flicking on the TV is gonna find
yeah,
funny.
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough.
Well, my mother loves you, so
big up Mumsy,
you're right.
Man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, big up Mumsy, man.
Big shout out to Helen.
Yeah,
enjoying Mo Gilligan. Very funny, very tall. Yeah.
But like, I think that was always my thing of like, I know I can make people laugh. It wasn't even like, of course I want to make people laugh where I'm from in the black community. Mm-hmm. But like when I seen the people that were coming to my shows, it was groups of girls, groups of guys, couples, and I was like, oh, like I've got a very like working class audience who are all from different backgrounds. But can you do it on? It's like the big stage where you're like, can you do it on TV at like Live at the Apollo?
But it's also bringing what's special about you at home there and knowing that will still translate, rather than trying to change yourself for the mainstream type of thing. And I remember the first time I did your show, your late night show, late-ish.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, you was on series 1, man.
Yeah. When we didn't even have to sit in separate couches or chairs, when it was like we could cough all over each
2019, man. I think you was on episode 2 as well.
Listen. Yeah. I remember it was me, David Schwimmer, Ricky Wilson.
Yeah.
And also they were so sweet and silly, which I didn't expect. You know, the way when it's like big people. And then Jada Pinkett Smith came on. And she was also really chilled.
Yeah.
But also I remember thinking it was the in-between bits that impressed me, because I've done a million of those shows and everything. And you were so good with your audience, and you were just so like, the room was really warm. And I felt like I was like, we're in Mo's house now. And that's
thanks,
how,
man.
and it felt like quite like 90s television. Do you know what I mean? More so than just like a format someone had crammed you into, because like, we've got this comedian, he's up and coming, let's give him a chat show, which never works if you like don't have it feel like the person's home or
of course.
or their sort of
we tried
place.
So hard to make it that where so many things, because I was like, look, it's series 1, I might not get series 2. So I was like, I just have to live every moment as I can for this series, because you sit there and you say, we're going to give you 6 episodes. So you're like, all right, cool, within that 6 episodes I want it to be everything I had imagined with the band. And even when we done this early series, we had people sitting behind me. Just so it felt nice and warm, and I always was like, if people watch this on television, it's like, we get people like, it's canned laughter. And I'm like, no, you can see it. You can see the people laughing in real time and feeling like they're,
and that's quite a 90s, that's quite a night, maybe because of our ages, we're like, that's quite a 90s vibe, and that they used to, even on the Big Breakfast and stuff, when they'd have people being like, in the background, and then that was actually the joy of watching it. And the presenters didn't mind. You weren't ruining anything.
It's very Kilroy. Do you remember Kilroy?
Yeah. And exactly, there's always someone being like,
well, you just go up to someone and ask them a question. So